Hey everyone, it's Traci Ruble. I'm a therapist in San Francisco, and I've been running a street listening project for the last 3 years called Sidewalk Talk. We sit out on public sidewalks all over the world, really, and we offer free listening. And in this political climate, I had a few things to say this morning. I was on a call with my leadership coach, Paul Zelizer, and we were talking about things that we're going to have to take up for 2018, especially if you're leading an organization. And it really made sense to me, and I think there are a few things that I've learned along the way from Sidewalk Talk. It's going to be pretty counterculture for the Bay Area, and it's going to maybe ruffle, so hold on to your seat for a minute. It's really been a change in me in terms of how I think about listening, so I'm going to out myself on something that I believed very differently even 6 months ago that I've now changed. So we're in a situation now where we actually, as leaders, are going to have to make space and behave differently around conversations of inclusion and diversity. We aren't going to silence or change the angry voices. We're actually going to have to learn how to integrate and make space for them. For a long time, I thought, wait a minute, everybody just needs to calm down and get along. Everybody needs to listen first. Everybody needs to just hold hands and let's all love each other. And, as a therapist, I realized that that's actually woefully misguided, okay? In American culture in particular, we have this hyper-individualistic stance that we should be able to find some kind of meditation practice, some type of prayer practice. We should be able to eat right. We should be able to work out. We should be able to go do yoga, go for a walk, sit in nature, go for a hike, that we should be able to, all by ourselves, take care of ourselves. And as a result, we should then be able to calm down, come to the table, and have a conversation. And I actually want to call bullshit on that. The reality is that when you have a crying child, for example, when my sons come home from school and they're really upset about something, I don't tell them that they should go meditate. They actually want me to hold them and listen to their outrage first. And sometimes the outrage, it's not even important that I totally make sense of it all. They just want to feel that somebody gets them. And in the process of me getting them, right, they feel included. And then they can go take care of themselves. Okay? So this idea that people should be able to calm down before coming to the table, I think is a really privileged, entitled, self-righteous stance. And I have been really privileged, entitled, and self-righteous, okay? I'm not gonna call you that. I'm just gonna say that I have been that. And I wish I could say it was all my friends of color and my gender that taught me this, but it was really parenting that taught me this, to really listen without the agenda of the other person needing to be in a different state. They get to be as worked up as they want to be. Now, that being said, you're still human when you're a listener. So I want to talk about a few skills that we all need to develop. And my goal in life with this listening project that I lead is that we take up listening as a practice as seriously as we take up mindfulness as a practice. We take up human connection and listening as a practice as seriously as we take up exercise. That we take up listening and human connection as a practice as seriously as we take up eating right. This is super important for us to heal a very old wound that says we have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and that anger is sinful or wrong or evil or bad, or this whole positive thinking thing is just really a privileged, self-righteous stance sometimes when we can't hear people's anger. So I want to offer some things. Are you ready? This would be a place where you might want to get a pen out. If you're going to listen to somebody's anger, you do as a listener have every right to let the person know when you're ready. Because if you're unprepared and you're going to sit down and somebody is going to perhaps personalize and you're going to be a stand-in for every perpetrator that's ever impacted them in their life, you need to be ready for that, okay? Because sometimes when my sons come home and they've been picked on at school, they're mad at me for it. They're not talking about the other kid. And I have to be prepared for that in order to help them calm down, in order to be in connection with them. And I have to be willing to not take it personally. So that's number 2. We so quickly take somebody's anger personally. And what I'm going to say to you is that every time somebody's really angry in a pretty hot way, to be an agent of change, we are there to help them metabolize those electrical impulses, and the content itself is less relevant, at least in the beginning when that person is in a fight response. But we behoove ourselves to listen and not get self-righteous or discount everything they say, but to stay in a really curious posture and a non-shaming posture, one that says, okay, you are in a place of pain. A colleague of mine uses the language pain body. You are in pain body right now. That is what we need to heal. We need to be able to listen to each other when we're in pain, and anger is pain, right? If you take it personally, if you start saying, oh, you should speak in a different way, you should be more calm, you're not an agent of change, of helping that person feel connected to in a way that they can calm themselves and really connect back with you, okay? That being said, if you do get to a place where you join them in the fight response, then you are going to have to set a boundary, and that's okay, right? That's why I think this is a practice, because if you continue to practice these listening skills, you'll get better at them so that you can listen longer when things get really intense. But if your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that sort of registers fear and threat, gets hijacked, right, then you're going to have to stop, right, and just say, hey, I really want to hear you, and something just happened in my nervous system where I can't be here with you in the way that I want to be. So we need to put this on pause right now, and let's come back, right? Takes some courage to set boundaries with someone when they're upset. And I actually think this is another thing we do terribly in this culture. We feel guilty or bad that we have limitations when we're listening to someone. But if we don't set a boundary, we're also in a position of privilege, because we're no longer recognizing our own humanity. We're acting as the healer or savior. And that doesn't help either, because then you're in a power differential with this person, you know? You get to be human too. So I'm saying you've got to build your stamina and resilience, but if you hit that wall, then you've got to take a break, okay? Third tip, if you can begin to think of anger as electricity that simply needs to be regulated, and that it's healthy and protective for the person, that they probably have a lot of experiences. You think of anybody that's been marginalized, anybody that's been left out, anybody that's been displaced, anybody that's of a race where they're not safe. Anger is a very healthy emotion to be feeling. So we need to honor that the electricity in the body of anger is just that. It's electricity. It's not some moral imperative about this person or about you. It's electricity that's getting regulated, right? And so I find that holding it that way can make it easier to stay a little longer with a person. Underneath anger is a real vulnerability, right? Anger is a signifier that there's an unmet need. And oftentimes when the anger gets really, really intense, the unmet need is, I don't feel safe. I feel disconnected, alone, and isolated, right? So feeling not safe and alone and isolated at the same time are really terrifying, right? So what is the antidote to that angry electricity? To not feel alone anymore and to feel safe when you're with another person. So do you recognize that if you actually stay in a really centered place while someone's really angry, what you provide is a sense of connection. So let me give you an analogy. So if you think of a little baby, right, who just got terrified because a dog just attacked him, right? And he's throwing a conniption fit. He's just absolutely terrified. And you send him to his room, okay, to figure that out on his own. So now he's terrified and he's all alone, okay? When you enter that bedroom to check on your kid, he's not going to suddenly just feel rosy because you're there. He's going to continue to feel angry. In fact, he might even feel angrier because just your presence, just your willingness to hear and lean into the conversation, to hear his hurt and his anger, he's going to feel less defended in his body and he's going to get angrier. But if you take that personally, guess what you're not able to do? You're not able to be a resource for your kid to calm down. They need to borrow your nervous system, okay? So you're asking people to calm down instead of actually helping be a regulatory force to really hear them out. So the fourth piece is to really check how your listening regulates and these self-righteous judgments that I find a lot of privileged folks that get into this around angry folks. They say you should be calmer, you should be more rational, you should choose the right time and place, okay? I get it. There is a need for us to be able to get work done, to be productive, to move forward. But I do think that a lot of our conversations around diversity really say, be nice. And I think that is an incredibly infuriating and privileged thing to say to someone. I think it's up to us in leadership roles to begin to change how we lead. So if you recognize that there is a need to listen in this way, then to actually create time and space for it in the weekly agenda, right? If you don't want it to just pop out when you're trying to be productive, then maybe what you need to do is have a place set aside for listening where everything is welcome. And in essence, that's what we're offering at Sidewalk Talk. You know, at the root of what we started doing 3 years ago, it was in response to gun violence and racism in this country. And creating a space where I could learn to listen better and I could confront all the things in me that might silence people and ask people to just get along. It's really changed me. So as 2018 approaches, I can't say that I know that everything there is to know about listening, but I can say this. We actually have to practice it. It sounds very simple. You can go take a class on it, but it's totally different taking a class and versus sitting your butt out on a sidewalk and practicing it regularly. And if you come to it with the intention to confront yourself, I think that one of the things we challenge folks all the time here at Sidewalk Talk is we say, look, you are not here to help people. The minute you have that stance, you are in a position of power, because then you're suggesting that everybody else needs to be helped and you don't. And that's just bullshit. Sorry, I'm just going to be that direct about it. We are here to hold space and be in connection, and that is enough. It is the connection that is healing. You and your knowledge and your spirituality or your psychological training or your management skills, those aren't the things that are actually healing. It's your connection and presence with another person that's healing. So I'm still learning to develop the stamina, right? And I've grown so much stamina, and I'm growing more. But recognizing how much time it's taken me to really develop these skills over the last 3 years, I want to implore you, whether it's with Sidewalk Talk or someone else, to engage in a practice of listening, to set aside time monthly, weekly, but to join some kind of listening circle where you're doing this on the regular, okay? Because in 2018, you look at the Me Too movement, you look at the Harvey Weinstein case, you look at discrimination along lines of race, gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation. And it's a really exciting time in terms of how things are coming out into the light of day, but at the same time, what are we going to do? What action step can we take? And in my bones, I have felt all along, I'm going to say it in a crass way, that some of us folks just need to shut up and listen. I said it in kind of a harsh way, but enough lecturing. And I'm lecturing as I say, stop lecturing. But just come out and join me sometime on the sidewalk and you'll see what I mean. And folks that have left the project, we've had folks leave Sidewalk Talk because they really got annoyed that we weren't out there offering to fix people, and that's great. It's not the place for them. So if this feels interesting to you, come out. And it impacts everything. It impacts community, it impacts mental health, it impacts the mental health of the listeners, right? We just did an impact study, and our listeners' well-being goes up, their sense of community connection goes up, their implicit bias goes down. That kind of stuff gets me really excited. And you come in contact with people in your community because you're sitting out there on the sidewalk that you might not normally come in contact with, and that gets me really excited. So practice, practice, practice. All right, thanks.